Okay. So we will begin with dedicating this presentation to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. You can join me in this prayer if you can. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajadam Sahagana Raguna Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinashana Narasimhaiti Namini Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayatim Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Mishwaram Om Tat Sat. So, welcome back again to everyone to our level 2 Gita Gyan. So, the topic that we are continuing from the last session is the Vedic Desire Tree and its ripened fruit. So, this is continuation, part 2. So, I'd like to just recap a little to bring to refresh our memory what we have discussed previously. So we talked about the Vedic scriptures, and we mentioned about the authenticity of the Vedic scriptures and how it's the oldest scripture known to man, and generally there are many thousands of verses. So these scriptures, these Vedic scriptures, they are all compiled in beautiful poetry. Very nice. In Sanskrit, it's called chanda or meter, specific poetry. So there are like this. There are thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of verses. Just Mahabharata alone is 100,000 verses. It's the largest epic known to man. So and it's all poetry, beautiful, perfect, symmetrical poetry. And we spoke about how all these Vedic scriptures, we can categorize them into two categories. So one is called Shruti and the other is called Smriti. And we talked about Shruti, just like how if we want to know the Father, if let's say, we are young, we are born, if a child wants to know who the Father is, the easiest way is for the child to ask the mother. So in this way, the Vedic scriptures is like the mother. So it's given to us. It's also called the manual of the universe. So therefore, the mother can point out, this is your father, like that to the child. And, in Bhagavad-Gita also, Krishna says, I am the seed-giving father, right? So this is the understanding. So we have Shruti and Smriti. And if you remember, what is Shruti? Shruti is that which is heard, right? Hearing, that which is heard. So because Shruti is that which is heard, right? It is passed down orally. So used to, before it was put down on verses form, before it was written down, it was actually passed down by disciplic succession from spiritual master to disciple, spiritual master to disciple. In this way, it's passing down through an unbroken line of what is called sampradaya. And it was passed down orally, so that, and because it's passed down orally, it cannot be corrupted, because it's, first of all, is poetry, and secondly, all the syllables are balanced. So you cannot make changes, because if you make changes, then the poetry will run. There will be incongruency in the recitation. So it won't sound correct. So it won't sound correct. So you see the ingenious way in which this knowledge was passed down from generation to generation, thousands of years, without any kind of interpretation. So they have this kind of system which preserves its authenticity. So that is oral presentation, and on top of that, it is passed down through disciplic succession, through the sampradaya, or the line of disciplic succession. So this is the first key. We introduced the first key. If we want to understand the Vedic scriptures correctly, if we don't want to be cheated, if you don't want to be misinterpreting the Vedic scriptures, if you want to understand the real purport, the meaning behind it, then we have to hear it through the sampradaya, the bona fide sampradaya, through disciplic succession. We cannot just on our own take a Veda and then start reading on it without the commentary or the explanation given by the spiritual masters through the disciplic succession. Otherwise, it will be misinterpreted. So this is the problem. So that's the first key of understanding or unlocking the secrets of these Vedic scriptures. They are protected. So later on, we will hear about the other keys. There are altogether 6 keys. So the Vedas, as I said, broken into Shruti and Smriti. And we also mentioned how it's God-given. These Vedas are not manufactured by human beings. It is presented by the Supreme Lord himself. Because if we want to know God, it is none other than him who can give it to us. So he came in this form of Vedavyas. So of course, it was given right from the beginning of creation. The words of all these scriptures were given into the ears of Brahma, the creator. And throughout the years, right, the different yugas went through. And then when Kali Yuga came, it was necessary to put all this knowledge in writing, because people were no longer as intelligent as before in different yugas. In Kali Yuga, people were short-lived, people did not have proper memory, they become easily deviated in their mind, they lose their purity. So therefore, it's not easy to remember these hundreds of thousands of verses. So for that purpose, Vyasadeva put them in writing. And a special person was requested just to ensure that this is not man-made. So Vyasadeva, who is none other than Krishna, the 17th incarnation of the Lord. So, and he dictated this Vedic scriptures, and it was captured and written by Ganesh. So we spoke about that also previously. And so, as I said, divided into Shruti and Smriti. Shruti is that which is heard, and Smriti is that which is remembered. And this, we were talking about Shruti previously. So Shruti, we talked about how it's broken into four, the four Vedas. And then to help us understand this Vedas, to help us unlock the mysteries of these Vedas, the Vedanga is given, a supplementary Veda Anga, the limbs of the Vedas to serve the Vedas. So by understanding the Vedanga, one can understand the full meaning of the Vedas. So what are these Vedangas? Vedangas are, these are the things, Siksha, the pronunciation, grammar, is basically Sanskrit, and also understanding astrology and astronomy. So these sciences, these are the Vedangas. So to understand the Vedangas, it's not easy. In Brahmanas, one has to be a Brahmana. One has to be trained, not just be born as a Brahmana. It's not necessary. Being born as a Brahmana is not important. What is important is that the person is trained as a Brahmana through disciplic succession. So, and when one is trained as a Brahmana, then one understands these meanings, grammar. One is able to understand the meaning because it's poetry. So very high language, very deep meanings, the meanings have different meanings. So we have to understand the context of it. So in that way, one can understand the real purport behind those scriptures. So one has to be trained. So a normal person may not be able to understand. And even if they read it, somehow they will misunderstand, because they are not guided by the parampara. So that's these four Vedas. So the Vedangas are basically the key to understand properly. So the Vedas contain, so what do the Vedas contain? The Vedas contain all kinds of information, millions and millions of topics. So here, some of these which are still present now are the Dhanur Veda. So therefore, they have material things like how to be, we talked about the Upavedas, the art of war, art of fighting, the art of building, civil engineering and all that, the art of medicine, the art of Gandharva Veda, which is the art of dance and music. The Bharatanatyam and all that comes from the Gandharva Veda. All the musical swaras, all that comes from Gandharva Veda. So like that, there are many, many things which are given to mankind. So mankind wasn't born in prehistoric situation, not living in caves. That was not the case. All this information were given right in the beginning of creation. And in this way, it was passed down. So not only material things, not just knowledge of how to live, how to cook, how to enjoy life, or how to live well, how to earn properly, how to execute our livelihood correctly, how to plant, agriculture, husbandry, all these things are discussed in this Vedas. But not just materialistic things, it's also discussing spiritual matters. So the spiritual matters are discussed in the Sama Veda, in the Shrutis, in the four Vedas. So this way, the Vedas are passed. And we also discussed how the Vedas can be divided into four sections. Samhitas, these are all the hymns, the songs, the mantras, the songs, and all that. And then the Brahmanas, which gives the explanation behind these meanings of this, and the rituals, the explanation on the rituals. And then the Aranyaka, the deeper meaning. What is the ultimate purpose of that ritual? Ultimately is to develop renunciation. So to let go materialistic activities and to look into permanent solutions to the problems of life, not just temporary solutions. So the Samhitas and the Brahmanas mainly deal with the temporary solutions, especially the Brahmanas. Whereas the Aranyaka section, it begins to give hints to a higher destination. That's Aranyaka. Deeper meanings behind all these things. So one starts to contemplate deeper. One retires from fruitive activities and start contemplating into higher thinking. And then the ultimate cream of the Vedas is the Upanishad, which is talking about pure spirituality, about transcending the cycle of birth and death. So when you talk about breaking the cycle of birth and death, that comes under Upanishads. So we talked about the Upanishads, how there are 108 Upanishads like that. And basically, these Vedas, mainly, we talked about how Samhita and Brahmana is all about karma kanda, or fruitive activities, how one can enjoy in this material creation. And then the Aranyaka is going beyond. It's bridging the fruitive activities to spiritual activities, or jnana kanda, getting real knowledge about the purpose of life, about the soul, and the goal of life. And we heard about how this is mainly talking about the 4 pillars of human existence: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So one performs duty. It's all about duties and how duties will lead to wealth, artha, and artha leads to the satisfaction of desires. And ultimately, it will lead to this, eventually one becomes stale, and they feel like, oh, these desires are not really giving me full satisfaction. So they start giving up, tyaga, and they start looking at spiritual emancipation, or moksha. So like that, the human being takes cycle again and again after liberation, because until one gets the knowledge of the real constitutional position of the soul, one is not completely liberated. One is just temporarily free from material life. But because he's not situated in real spiritual activity, so therefore he again takes birth. So like that, the cycle continues, goes on and on and on. Whereas the Upanishads helps to break this cycle. And all this is very difficult to, so many scriptures are there. So 108 Upanishads. So a lot of thousands of verses in all these Vedas. So the essence in short form, all these Vedas, all this important information on the Upanishads, because Upanishad is the cream of the Vedas. So the most important sections of those Upanishads are written in short form in the Vedanta Sutra. So we explain this also. It's also called the Brahma Sutra. So here it's written in note form, simple note form. And the meaning can be quite cryptic because it's short notes like this. So it can mean several things. At least 5 or 10 different meanings can be captured in one sentence. So these are the Vedanta Sutras. So it requires a lot of explanation according to the Sampradaya. So therefore, the various acharyas have given commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. But at the same time, so I will speak about the Vedanta Sutra more in a while later on. So we discussed all this, and we also spoke about the other part. So this is all what we call Shruti. Shruti means that which is heard. And the essence of this, the cream of the Shruti is the Upanishad, and the essence of that cream is the Vedanta Sutra, which is in short notes. Okay. So then there is also, when one wants to really understand the Vedic scriptures, one has to know both Shruti and Smriti. Both has to be understood correctly. So there are some classes of spiritualists who will say, I will only accept the Shruti. I don't want to accept the Smriti. Or some will say, I'll only accept the Smriti and I will not accept Shruti. So like that, there are all kinds of people. But to understand the full thing, because everything is given by God, so one cannot take some part and then reject the other. It has to be accepted, everything has to be accepted wholesale, and then the meaning will become clear. So therefore, Shruti and Smriti has to be accepted together. We'll talk about that in a while. Why? Because in Kali Yuga, there's this verse in Skanda Purana, right? Ashuddha Kalau Shudra Sambhava. So in Kali Yuga, Brahmanas will certainly become like Sudras. So, and then Kalau Shudra Sambhava means there are only Shudras in this Kali Yuga. So everybody is born that way in Kali Yuga. Without the proper samskaras, without the proper training, without the proper sampradayas. So in this way, they are born that way, generally. And we are talking about generally in Kali Yuga. So therefore, the training is not given. So when one is not having this kind of training of the Vedanga and all this, so one cannot understand the Vedas properly. So in fact, because of this also, it is specifically mentioned in the Vedas that only Brahmanas are allowed to study the Vedas. Those who are not Brahmanas, Vedas means including all this, the Upanishad and all that, Vedanta Sutra and all that. So only Brahmana. So one has to bring oneself to the qualification of a Brahmana, and then in this way one can study the blessings is given. So these Vedic scriptures are not ordinary scriptures. You cannot just go to the shop, buy it, and then read it on its own and then try to make sense, because we will become bewildered. It has to come through parampara. It has to be guided by the acharyas. So that's why it's spiritual. Blessings are required in order to understand this. And how do we get these blessings? By performance of pious activities, by sadhana, by chanting the names of the Lord. So in this way, we build a credit of piety in our life. And as we build the credits of piety, the intelligence becomes purified. And as the intelligence becomes purified by the blessings of the Lord, so then we will realize we are able to digest the information. We are able to understand this information. So therefore, some austerities initially recommended before one ventures into this. So ultimately, one has to come to be a Brahmana before one understands the Shruti. And in Kali Yuga, everybody is not a Brahmana. So then how to solve this issue? So therefore, we have to go through Smriti, and then also in this way we have to understand Shruti. So Shruti and Smriti is accepted together. So let's talk about Smriti. What is this Smriti? So Smriti is that which is remembered, right? So here Shruti is to hear orally, to go through the ear. And then it begins with hearing, but then one has to remember. That will be the goal of understanding. The goal of hearing is to remember. And once you remember, you again speak. You teach others. So in this way, it's a loop. So under Smriti, what is considered Smriti Sastra? So Smriti Sastra is divided into 3 categories. So Purana, Itihasa, and Tantra. Now, before we go through these 3 in detail, let's try to understand first where's the evidence to indicate the importance of both Shruti and Smriti. So therefore, we have this verse. This is from the Brihat Aranyaka Upanishad, which is coming from the Shruti only. So the Shruti itself is telling this particular verse. The Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva Vedas, as well as the Itihasas and the Puranas, all manifest from the breathing of the Lord. So here we have the clear evidence to show that both Shruti and Smriti is coming from the Lord. All manifest from the breathing of the Lord. The Itihasas and Purana. Itihasa and Purana comes from Smriti. Okay? So all of these is coming directly from the Lord. So it's to be accepted, both of them. And then it says, this is from the same Upanishad also, the Rig, Yajur, Sama and Atharva Vedas, the Itihasas, Puranas, Upanishads, verses and mantras, sutras, and the spiritual knowledge and explanation within all emanate from the Supreme Being. So again, another verse to indicate that both are to be accepted together. And then the importance of Smriti is established clearly over here in the Chandogya Upanishad, which is also coming from the Shruti. So what does it say? It says, indeed, Rig, Yajur, Sama, Atharva are the names of the four Vedas. The Itihasa and the Purana are known as the fifth Veda. So it is as important as the four Vedas. It is as important, in fact, it's called the fifth Veda. What are the fifth Veda? The Puranas and the Itihasas. We will talk about what is Purana and Itihasa in a while. But first, we want to establish the importance. Why I'm stressing on this? Because, as I said, there are some classes of spiritualists who do not accept certain scriptures, who do not accept Shruti, or some do not accept Smriti. So, and then they become misguided. So that's the problem. So they have to understand through this. Going through Sampradaya, the key to understand all this is given step by step so that we are strong in our faith. So then, here's another one. The four divisions, this is from the Srimad-Bhagavatam. The four divisions of the original sources of knowledge, the Vedas, were made separately. But the historical facts and authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas are called the fifth Veda. So we have another reference, which is using the same term, fifth Veda, to indicate the Purana and the Itihasas. So therefore, this is the third key. The first key was Sampradaya. We have to understand this through Sampradaya. The second key was that both Smriti and Shruti are important. And the third key is very important here, particularly is the fifth Veda, which is the Smriti, comes under Purana and Itihasa. So let's see what else, what other evidence is there to indicate about the Smriti. This is from Mahabharata, Adi Parva. One should expand and accept the meaning of the Vedas with the help of the Itihasas and Puranas. So here is a very clear statement. If we want to understand the purport of the Vedas, because it's very difficult to understand these Vedas, therefore, we can understand it through the help of the Itihasas and the Puranas. So therefore, in Kali Yuga especially, for the rest of the population, the Smriti is considered more important because the Brahmanas are, as I mentioned, not very qualified in Kali Yuga. So therefore, the Smriti gives clearer information. It is specifically written by Vyasadeva for those who are not Brahminical, and at the same time, it is containing the clear meaning. It is given a clear meaning of the Vedas is explained in the Purana, in the Smriti. And look at this sentence. The Vedas are afraid of being mistreated by one who is ignorant of the Itihasas and Puranas. So here's another clear indication. So unless one is conversant in the Itihasas and the Puranas, one understands, because here the meanings become very clear. One is able to understand the purport, the ultimate, the bigger picture. And one understands the bigger picture, then they can interpret the Vedas correctly. Because if they don't have the bigger picture, then they can't. So here, very nice verse. The Vedas are afraid of being mistreated by one who is ignorant of the Itihasas and Puranas. So what is this Itihasa and Puranas? Okay, let's talk about, first we will speak about Itihasa. Itihasa basically means history. It talks about history, and what is not the boring history that we study in our school. So here, history, there are two scriptures in this Itihasa. One is Ramayana and one is Mahabharata. So both of these are called Itihasas or histories. So they are factual. They actually did happen. And there are evidences, to indicate these epics did happen. So Ramayana is about 20,000 verses and 18,000, I think, 20,000 or something like that verses. And Mahabharata is 100,000 verses. It is the largest epic in the world. No other epic comes even close. The Greek epic Iliad and Odyssey, it's still few thousand sentences. It's not even in poetry. Whereas the Ramayana itself beats Iliad and Odyssey. What to speak of the Mahabharata, which is 5 times larger. So it contains a lot of information, and it's written in a very attractive, easy to understand story form. It's like a novel. It's like a soap opera. It's like a serial, right? It is a serial. It's been made into serials in India and all that, Ramayana, Mahabharata. In fact, in those days, just 100 years ago, when there was no TV and all, every village in India, in wherever Bharat Bhumi was ruling, the villagers, the citizens, the city people, they used to entertain themselves by stories from the Puranas and the Itihasas. So they used to have dramas, even the dances, all this classical, all these were basically based on these Puranas and Itihasas. You can find that even in Indonesia and all that, so much Ramayana, especially in Thailand, you can find everywhere where these things are very popular. So just just 100 years ago, just 50 years ago, in fact, every Indian Hindu household would be very conversant with these two, Ramayana and Mahabharata. And at one point of time, even when the TV came, they produced the Ramayana and the Mahabharata in TV. And it used to be such a popular hit. People used to be waiting for the next series to come out. So that was in earlier times. Now there are too many distractions. So people have, and everything basically comes from here. Ramayana and Mahabharata. It has everything. You talk about, it's like a full soap opera, full dynasty, Dallas, whatever. All these things are in the Mahabharata. And in this, because the Mahabharata is so interesting, it has all kinds of topics, right? Warfare, politics, intrigue, family struggle, jealousy. So it makes to be a very good drama. So this is Vyasadev's genius. He wanted to, because you go and ask normal people to study the Vedas, they will fall asleep. But then majority of the people in Kali Yuga, they would be very interested to hear stories. So therefore, Vyasadev's genius was to insert the moral of the Vedas, to insert the meaning of the Vedas, to insert the higher knowledge of the Vedas very beautifully. The culture, the knowledge, all of it is beautifully captured in these stories. Simply by hearing the stories, we can learn so much about culture, Vedic culture. We can learn so much about the goal of life, everything from every aspect of these things mentioned in the Vedas. We can get them easily from the Purana and Itihasas. So therefore, this is Itihasa, Ramayana and Mahabharata. And the genius of Vyasadeva was, he wrote this Mahabharata so interestingly because he knew this is the only way I can capture the attraction of the normal people. So in this way, when they are so attracted, when they are really hooked, they are hooked by this serial. Oh, when is the next episode going to come? I cannot wait. So when they are hooked, and finally the climax of the serial, just like every serial will have a climax, the cliffhanger episode. So the climax is the war. When the war is about to start, After all the different intrigues, finally it's all to be decided in the battlefield, the war, Mahabharata. So in that war, when people's interest is at the peak, at the maximum, when everybody's attention is full, when the eyes are open wide, when nobody wants to take a toilet break or anything like that, because they're scared they'll miss a scene. At that time, Vyasadeva inserts the Bhagavad-Gita. So Bhagavad-Gita is basically the it's the essence of this entire Veda. So this is how intelligently the essence of the Upanishads, he has put it very nicely as the Bhagavad-Gita in the middle of the Mahabharata, so that those who are, everybody can get attracted to this. Everybody will come in contact with the Bhagavad-Gita. Because otherwise, nobody knows the Upanishad, other than the Brahmanas, not everybody would have read them. So this is the trick of Vyasadeva, to get everyone to get in contact with somehow or other the Bhagavad-Gita. So therefore, this Bhagavad-Gita, I put a line of arrow here. It's basically the essence of the Upanishad. So it's called Gita-Upanishad, the song of God, the Upanishad, the song of God. So that is inserted here. And let's see what Lord Shiva has to say in Padma Purana. So Goddess Parvati said to Lord Shiva, "My dear husband," this is from the Padma Purana, "you know all the transcendental truths, and by your mercy, I have heard the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. O Lord, now I long to hear from you the glories of the Bhagavad-Gita, which was spoken by Lord Krishna, and by hearing which one's devotion to Krishna increases." So Parvati is asking Lord Shiva to speak about the glory of Bhagavad-Gita. And Lord Shiva will reply to Parvati by telling her about a conversation that took place between Lord Vishnu and Lakshmi Devi. So in that conversation, Lord Vishnu told Lakshmi Devi, "My dear Lakshmi, the workings of my multifold energies and how to become free from the bonds of birth and death and attain my eternal nature can only be understood by one of pure intelligence, who has an inclination to render service unto me." So how do we get this pure intelligence? We can get this pure intelligence. By getting this pure intelligence, we can understand how to become free from birth and death. And not only become free, simply becoming free is not the end of the story. We have to become, we have to attain the eternal nature of the Lord, to go to his lotus feet. So both has to be done. So how do we do this? Once we get pure intelligence. And how do we get pure intelligence? So Vishnu says, "One who has an inclination to render service unto me." So how do we serve the Lord? There are many ways to serve the Lord, beginning from Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevanam, right? Remember what we have discussed in level 1. And more importantly in Kali Yuga is Kirtanam, chanting the names of the Lord. So chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, every day as a sadhana, that is service to the Lord. In this way, we can purify our hearts. Reading Bhagavad Gita daily is also service to the Lord. And in this way, we can purify our hearts. Why we are doing all these things? First of all, we are purifying. Purifying means clearing our sins. And as our sins clear, our intelligence becomes correctly situated. We're able to understand the right concepts. So, and once that happens, then we can understand how to go back to the Lord. So, and then Vishnu says, this transcendental knowledge which is developed by getting pure intelligence is fully explained in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So this is the glory of the Bhagavad Gita. So Lord Vishnu said, "Indeed, I myself have manifested in the form of Bhagavad Gita." Padma Purana. So this is one of the reasons why Bhagavad Gita is worshipped. So there are people, in fact, on Gita Jayanti, which is in December, at that time, usually people will put the Bhagavad Gita on the altar and they will do arati for that Bhagavad Gita. So they worship the book. They offer bhoga, food to the Bhagavad Gita, because that Bhagavad Gita is like the deity. It's like the Lord himself. So he says here, right? My Lord Vishnu said, I myself have manifested in the form of Bhagavad Gita, the literary form. So one way to worship is to do arati, but even better than to worship, do arati from Gita is to read the Gita and to understand the Gita and to live the instructions of the Gita. So, and also we have Sankaracharya, who's an incarnation of Lord Shiva. He himself says, Sarvopanishado Gavo. So all the Upanishads is like the cow. He's giving an example, right? Like a poetic example. All the Upanishads is like a cow. Dugdha Gopala Nandana. And the milkman is Krishna. He is milking these Upanishads, all the Upanishads from the cow. Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhukta. So Partho means Arjuna, and Arjuna is the calf. Vatsa means calf. So Arjuna is the calf who is going to drink this milk. And what is this milk? Dugdam Gitamritam Mahat. So this milk is the Gita, Amrita. It is the nectar of the Bhagavad Gita. So which is relished by devotees such as like Arjuna. And it is directly given by the Lord. So all the Upanishads are like a cow, and the milker of the cow is Lord Sri Krishna, the son of Nanda. Arjuna is the calf. The beautiful nectar of the Gita is the milk. And the fortunate devotees of fine theistic intellect are the drinkers and enjoyers of the Gita. So this is then the position of the Bhagavad Gita. So now we can understand where the Bhagavad Gita is positioned. It is Smriti, but though it is Smriti, it contains the essence of the Shruti. And specifically, because here, if you read Rig Veda and all that, it's very mysterious. It's difficult to understand the verses. Whereas all this is mentioned very clearly in the Bhagavad Gita and inserted very nicely for us to understand. So this is the position of the Gita. Okay, so now we've heard about the Itihasas. So let's hear about the Puranas. So when we talk about Puranas, there are Purana, the word Purana means the oldest, or stories of the oldest. That's basically what Purana means. Very ageless. That's what Purana means, ageless. So Puranas can be divided into two, the Mahapuranas, which are 18 of them, and the Upapuranas, which are 18 of them also. So these are the Mahapuranas are called Mahapuranas because they contain many subject matters. So usually, in order to qualify as a Mahapurana, it has to cover at least 8 to 10 different topics. Then it's considered a Mahapurana. If it only talks about 1 or 2 topics, then it's called an Upapurana, a small Purana. So, but nevertheless, they are important. And amongst them, the Mahapuranas are more important. So let's see what the scriptures say about the position of the Puranas. This is from the Skanda Purana. I consider the Puranas equal to the Vedas. So this we have already heard in many other places. Just now, earlier on, we mentioned. And then we have this from the Naradiya Purana. I consider the message of the Puranas to be more important than that of the Vedas. Oh, this is a very important aspect. So it doesn't mean we neglect the Vedas. Both are there. Both are important. They supplement each other. But we have to understand them through the bigger picture of understanding it through the Puranas. Then we can divine the meanings of the Vedas very well without any mistake. So all that is in the Vedas is in the Puranas without a doubt. So this is from the Naradiya Purana, a verse. Naradiya Purana is spoken by, is a conversation of Lord of Narada Muni. So this is captured by Vyasadeva. So therefore, this is therefore the fourth key. The fourth key is Smriti power, the power of Smriti. So especially for people in Kali Yuga, this is the way to go. By understanding this thoroughly and properly, the full purport of all this is already understood. So there is no necessity to actually go through the detailed thousands and thousands of verses here. One just has to understand them through these two mediums. And then let's talk about the Puranas. So under the Maha Purana, we have 18 Mahapuranas, which I mentioned, right? So these are the 18 Mahapuranas: Bhagavad Purana, Linga Purana, Narada Purana, Skanda Purana, Garuda Purana, Matsya Purana, Vayu Purana, Bhavishya Purana, Brahmanda Purana, Brahma Purana, Padma Purana, Vishnu Purana, Shiva Purana, Vamana Purana, Markandeya Purana, Varaha Purana, Agni Purana, and Kurma Purana. Okay, so all these Puranas are listed. They are cross-referenced in different scriptures. So they are mentioned in other places. So like, for example, in the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is the Bhagavad Purana, it talks about all these Puranas which are recorded as Mahapuranas. So let's see what it says about this Mahapurana. So there's this verse which comes in the Padma Purana, Uttarakhanda. Vaishnavanam Naradiyam cha tata Bhagavatam Shubham Garudam cha tata Padmam Varaham Shubha Darshane Satvikani Puranani Vigneyani Shubhani Vai. So what this verse means, there are three sets of verses. We will talk about the first verse. So what Padma Purana is saying here is that these Puranas, there is a key to understanding these Puranas also. So there are three modes of nature. We know about the three modes of nature, right? The Sattva Guna, Raja Guna, Tama Guna. We have heard about that in the Bhagavad-Gita already, in level 1, okay? So the Puranas are also divided into these three different modes. Puranas in the mode of goodness, Sattvikani Purana, Rajasani Nibodhame, and Tamasani Nibodhame. So the Puranas are broken into three sections. So those who are generally in the mode of goodness, they will be referring more to the Sattvika Puranas. Those in the mode of passion will be referring more to the Rajasa Puranas. And those in the mode of ignorance will be referring more to the Tamasa Puranas. There are nuggets of everything is true, but the thing is, the way it is written is in such a way that it's particularly catered for those kind of people. And why is this necessary? Why need to have three different modes like this? Because the people in this world, not everybody can take up to scriptural study. So how to attract other people then? If only mode of goodness, no problem lah. Those in the mode of goodness, they will read the Vedas and they will also understand the mode of goodness Puranas. But what about the other people, those in the mode of passion, those in the mode of ignorance? How to help them? Because they will not have any inclination to understand Vedic scriptures. So therefore, these other sets of Puranas are specifically catered to, it's written in such a way that it will attract the interest of those in those particular modes. So by this, they will get attracted and they will read them. And as they are reading, there will be many things in those Puranas which will help to satisfy those desires that people in those three modes, whatever desires they have in those three modes, they will find many information which will help them to satisfy their desires. It will satisfy their mind also. But as they are reading, here is also the genius of Vyasadeva. He tricks those people by putting nuggets of information here and there, which leads towards higher understanding. leads towards higher truths. So if as they are reading, suddenly they may come across a particular verse which may not sit in the same level. And this will create doubt in them. This will create some kind of curiosity. Why suddenly they're talking about this? So when they start thinking this way, then the curiosity is aroused. And in this way, they will want to understand further beyond. When the right time comes, when their inclination and their maturity and as they have gone through life and they have gone through frustration, so they will come to a certain level of understanding, and then they will take advantage of those particular verses, and in this way become even more elevated. So let's see, what are these three Puranas, sets of Puranas? So the first verse, Vaishnavanam Naradiyam Chatata, oh beautiful lady. So this is Lord Shiva telling to Parvati. This is from the Padma Purana. So Lord Shiva is referring to Parvati, oh beautiful lady. One should know that the Vishnu, Naradiya, Bhagavata, Garuda, Padma, and Varaha are all in the mode of goodness. So these are the Puranas which are in the mode of goodness. So we already know what the mode of goodness is. So mode of goodness is about higher knowledge. It's about going beyond the cycle of birth and death. So this kind of information, this kind of knowledge is given in these particular Puranas. And then here they are. I've highlighted them. Bhagavad Purana, Narada Purana, Garuda Purana, Padma, Vishnu, and Varaha. 6. So there are 18. So divided into 6, 6, 6. So this is the fifth key for us to understand. So those who don't come in the parampara system, those who don't come in the disciplic succession of the Guru Parampara, in the four disciplic succession which is mentioned in the Padma Purana. Remember the Madhva, the Brahma Madhva Sampradaya, the Shiva, the Rudra Sampradaya, the Sri Ramanuja Sampradaya, and also the Kumara Nimbarka Sampradaya. These are the 4 Sampradayas which are accepted as bona fide or as original in this Kali Yuga. So this information which is coming through these Sampradayas, these disciplic successions, then people will not be cheated. Otherwise, then there is a very great risk. So therefore, understanding it through these parampara system, then one gets this particular knowledge. So 3 Guna Puranas. So here we can understand there are 3 different modes. The Puranas are divided into the 3 different modes. So the Bhagavad-Gita also says that, right? The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, 17.4, according to the modes of nature acquired by the embodied soul, one's faith can be of 3 kinds: in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance. Now hear about this. So this we already went through earlier. So this is important because remember, the Vedic scriptures are not meant only for Kali Yuga. They are meant for all the yugas. In every yuga, Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and it's also meant for every human being. It's not just meant for a class of human being. In previous yugas, the whole world was Bharatvarsha. The whole world was Vedic. Even in Kali Yuga, in the beginning, first 1,000-2,000 years also, the whole world was Bharat Bhumi. Then slowly Bharat Bhumi shrunk. And then now, even a few hundred years ago, Bharat Bhumi included most of Asia. From Vietnam to, China was called Kasha Desh. China was also part of Bharat Bhumi at one point of time. It was called Kasha Desh. And then the European, Greek, and all that, they were called Yavana Desh. So all this is mentioned in the scriptures. They were all part of it. So this is this is how we can understand about the 3 different types of Puranas. So to understand better, so remember generally when we speak about scripture, it is in the mode of goodness. But within the mode of goodness itself, there are subdivisions of modes. So the Puranas are in the mode of goodness generally, But within there are subdivisions. Remember, we talked about all this in level 1. So here, the mode of goodness Puranas are these. And basically, the Puranas in the mode of goodness recommend worship of Vishnu or Krishna, mainly as the main predominating deity. So that is basically the understanding from the Puranas in the mode of goodness. So then we also have the Puranas in the mode of passion. So here it's described, Brahmandam Brahma Vaivarta Markandeyam Tataivacha Bhavishyam Vamanam Brahmam Rajasani Nibodhame. Translation: the Brahmanda, Brahma Vaivarta, Markandeya, Bhavishya, Vamana, and Brahma are in the mode of passion. So these are the ones in highlighted red. Right. Bhavishya, Brahmanda, Brahmana, Vamana, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Brahmanda, Brahma Vaivarta. Brahma Purana is Brahma Vaivarta of this Brahma. Vayu Purana is also known as Brahma Vaivarta. So like that, 6 Puranas here in the mode of passion. So Brahman, all this is in the mode of passion. And generally, the Puranas in the mode of passion, they recommend the worship of Lord Brahma. But Lord Brahma was cursed at one point of time. And the curse was that nobody should worship him. So that's why you will not find, this is a story, it's a Puranic story. So because of this curse, nobody worships Brahma in this world. You won't find many temples of Brahma anywhere, or even deities of Brahma. In fact, in the whole of India, there is only one place where there is a temple of Brahma. This is in Pushkar. You will find a Brahma temple there. Otherwise, you will find it outside India. You will find it in Thailand. Remnants of this civilization is there. Brahma worship is also there. You will find deities of Brahma in Thai Buddhism sometimes. So because Brahma was cursed, therefore, there are also other parts in the Puranas which recommend the worship of Durga. So Durga is the mother of the material energy. She is the material energy, also known as Maya Devi. So those generally in the mode of passion would like to worship Durga Devi. And generally, the type of worship they have is they want something. They want, they want well-being, they want wealth, they want power, they want victory. So this kind of things. So therefore, generally, those who are in these modes, they worship this predominating deity, which is in the mode of passion. And those who are in the mode of ignorance, Matsyam Kaurmam Tata Laingam Saivam Skandam Tataiva Cha Agneyam Cha Sat Etani Tamasani Nibodame. So what this means, the Matsya, Kurma, Linga, Shiva, Skanda, and Agni are in the mode of ignorance. So these are especially meant for those people in the mode of ignorance, the tamasic nature. And here we can see, so the Matsya, Kurma, Linga, Shiva, Skanda, and Agni, the ones in blue, right? These are basically, it's meant for those people. Those who are tamasic means those who are rather, those who have envy in their heart, who have some kind of desire, carnal desires, or lethargic, or there are certain aspects, or into tantric magic. So certain kind of things like that. But it's not just that. It's while these things are described in those Puranas, the type of stories you will find in those Puranas will be very much akin to these kind of topics. So it will attract the interest of those in the mode of ignorance in this way. But while these are being described, these stories are all there, but while these stories are described, At the same time, nuggets of higher knowledge is also inserted in all these Puranas as well, to lead them to a higher destination. So slowly bring them by simply following and reciting these particular Puranas, one elevates their consciousness. One comes from the mode of ignorance, goes higher to the mode of passion. And from there, they go higher to the mode of goodness. So it may happen in one lifetime, or it may take several lifetimes before it can happen. But the point is, there is an elevation. So this is the purpose of these Puranas, to elevate human society, elevate the jivas. So basically, the Puranas in the mode of ignorance, they recommend worship of Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva is also known as Bhuteshwar. So therefore, Lord Shiva has associates, the type of associates, like, who are the famous people who used to worship Lord Shiva? For example, Ravana, Vrkasura, who else? There are many other asuras. So generally they tend to, because Lord Shiva is known as Asutosh, he's very merciful. So because he's very merciful, he is easily pleased with the demons or with the asuras. So when they worship him, the Lord, he gives his mercy to them. And not only to the demons, he also gives his mercy to the dutas, the pisachas. He has his followers. If you read the scriptures, you will find that Lord Shiva has this type of followers. They all travel the night. There's a different times of the day. So there is something called Rudra Muhurta. Rudra Muhurta is the time of night between 12 until dawn. It's midnight until about 5 o'clock, about 4 something. So this is Rudra Muhurta. So it is said at that time, all these entities, they travel with Lord Shiva. And he's very merciful. So he tries to help these entities and giving them chance to take human birth. So this is one of his activities. So he is also the predominating deity of the tamasa nature. So each of these 3 modes have predominating deities. So Lord Shiva is the predominating deity of tamasa guna. So like that, these Puranas are all there. So therefore, you will find, those who, and there are some forms in Lord Shiva has also very nice sattvic form, which is described in the what you call the sattvic Puranas. But in the tamasic Puranas, you will find Lord Shiva in a fierce form. So like even Durga, you will find her in a fierce form. Like for example, the Devi Bhagavata Purana, which is one of the Upa Puranas, is also part of this. And you will find like Kali worship, Bhairava worship. So these kind of worships in very fierce forms are there so that mercy can be given to people of such inclination. So that is the Purana in the mode of ignorance. So like this, we can understand where each of these Puranas stay. So if one is interested in transcending the cycle of birth and death, that can only happen in the mode of goodness. So one has to bring oneself to the mode of goodness before one is able to break through the cycle of birth and death. Otherwise, the other modes, they will only go through continuous cycle. Okay. So, like that. So now in this Puranas, just now we mentioned there's Maha Puranas, 18 Upa Puranas, but there is one Purana which is extra special, which is very, very special. So this Puranas, amongst the 18, I've put here, you see, Bhagavad Purana. This Bhagavad Purana is also called Srimad-Bhagavatam. Now this Srimad-Bhagavatam's position is very, very special. How do we know this? So we will show you some evidence in a while. So this Srimad-Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Purana is known as Amala Purana. Amala Purana means Amala means spotless. It is spotless. That means it's perfect. Without any kind of course, everything is perfect, but then here it's particularly said perfect because remember we mentioned that these Puranas are in the three modes. Whereas Amala Purana is beyond the three modes. This Purana alone is transcending the three modes, beyond the three modes. So therefore, it's called Amala Purana. So before we speak a bit more on that, we will talk about the history of Srimad-Bhagavatam. But I think it's already 9:08. So we will speak about this Amala Purana and further on in the next session. Okay, so today we have gone through the different aspects of Vedic scriptures in terms of Shruti. We recapped and we spoke about Smriti, but we haven't covered Smriti fully because there's one more branch to it, which is Tantra. We will talk about that later. But before that, I wanted to speak about Srimad-Bhagavatam, but we don't have too much time. So we will stop here and we will continue in the next session. So hopefully we will finish it. It should be 3 sessions. So we will finish it in the 3rd session, this particular topic of Vedic scriptures. Okay, so thank you very much for listening and attending the session. So if there are any questions, anyone wants to raise anything, we can try to answer.
Yes, Prabhu. Good evening, Prabhu. This is Rajan here again.
Hare Krishna, you managed to join.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Prabhu, you had actually put Bhagavad-Gita under Itihasas, under Smriti.
Yeah.
But Bhagavad-Gita being the song of the Bhagwan, song of the Lord, shouldn't it come under Shruti in the sense that it is that which is heard?
Yeah, but this categorization, actually everything is coming from the Lord, because we earlier we mentioned some verses.
Yes.
All of these, both the Puranas and the Itihasas and the Shrutis are coming from the breathing of the Supreme Lord. So that is described. So when we say, it's just a way of categorization. So when we say Shruti, you see, Shruti can only be studied by the Brahmanas. So therefore, Bhagavad-Gita was purposely put in Smriti. The essence of the Shruti was purposely put in Smriti for the benefit of people in Kali Yuga, especially because majority are not Brahmanas. So by studying the Bhagavad-Gita alone, one understands the essence of everything in Shruti. So that's the reason it's parked under Smriti, because Bhagavad-Gita is one of the chapters in Mahabharata, and Mahabharata is categorized as Itihasa.
Smriti.
Yeah, Smriti. So it's not our speculation. This is basically the categorization given by Vyasadeva himself. So that's why we follow in that sense.
Okay. Thank you, bro.
Thank you. Oops. Okay. Anything else anyone wants to raise? So the Bhagavad Gita is not the only Gita. There are other Gitas also. There are, in Srimad-Bhagavatam, there is something called Uddhava Gita. Uddhava Gita is Lord Krishna speaking to Uddhava, his very good devotee, another great devotee. And it's deeper. It's actually quite a number of verses also. And it carries on more detail the topics which are discussed in the Bhagavad Gita. So like that, there are other Gitas. There is also something called the Shiva Gita, and then there is the Ashtavakra Gita. So like that, there are other, this is not the only Gita, but Bhagavad Gita is the main Gita. It is basically, when he says Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad means God. So the song of God directly. So this is the most famous of all the Gitas, and it's the most important. In fact, it's called Gita Upanishad. It's the only Gita to have Gita Upanishad, and it's glorified in all the other scriptures as well. So 2 of these scriptures are glorified very greatly, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad-Bhagavatam. We've heard about Bhagavad Gita already. So the next session, we will hear more about the glories of Srimad-Bhagavatam. So Bhagavatam begins where the Gita ends. So we will hear more on the importance of that. And basically these two, the Gita and the Bhagavatam, are what we call the essence of the entire Vedic literatures. At the end of it, we will see how these two form the essence of everything. Okay, all right. So I don't see anything in the chat. I hope it was easy to understand what I spoke. So these charts are there. So I will send them to you also. And there won't be quiz yet because we still haven't finished the topic. So once we finished all three, then I will release the quiz. Then you can test your memory and understanding and see. The quizzes in level 2 will be a bit harder. It won't be so straightforward. So there'll be multiple choice and things like that. So it's basically to help us to really understand the topic deeper. Don't worry if you get wrong also. Anyway, I won't mention this now. I'll mention it next week. So, right. So if there's any other questions, anyone wants to raise anything else? Okay. Right. So if that's all, then thank you so much for staying with me until 9:15. Okay, we'll see you all again next week.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Haribol.